Hi, my name is Naomi, and I'm the creator of 2 and or 4, who makes products for your 2-legged loved ones and your 4-legged loved ones. Today's project, which is beginner friendly, it is among the easiest projects to do. A small blanket, but honestly the process is pretty much the same whether you do a small blanket or a large blanket. The larger blanket, you're just going to use more pins. The technique is pretty much the same for either one. It is fleece on one side, Sherpa on the other, and in this particular case I have a fleece that has a check pattern. What I do want to tell you about fleece is because it's technically a knit fabric, it will shift and stretch. So I'll give you an example. I cut a straight line on one of the check starting rows, and when I measured down and I took a tape measure and I measured at different spots to the same row, and they measure slightly differently. So you need to take that into account when you're dealing with fleece. All right, so I'm going to switch the camera angle so you can see what I'm going to do. All right, so the first thing I want to figure out on this is how long do I want to cut this? And I'm going to make it easy on myself, and I'm actually going to use one of the rows to cut this. It's probably a little bit longer than what I need, but that'll be fine. And you can use a rotary cutter or a scissor, whichever one works for you. I'm gonna start it with the scissor, and then I'm probably going to use the rotary cutter. Let me get my rotary cutter out. And I'm not gonna get crazy at this point because it's not going to really matter at the moment. Okay. All right, I'm gonna cut off a lot of this selvage, and again, I'm just gonna use, I happen to have a pattern where it has lines, so I'm gonna use it, and I'm gonna just cut straight down on that line. Right, pull it down. Okay. All right, so now have a nice clean edge. All right, whatever finished width and length I want, I have to add my 5/8 seam allowance, which means on both width and length, I need to add 5/8 times 2, which will give me, I believe, 1 1/4. So I want to make sure that whatever finished measurements I have, for the cut of the fabric, I add 1 1/4. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and once again use one of the lines to mark this, one of the rows. Now I'll move this over. What I do is at the bottom of my blanket, when I cut it out, is I take and I fold it in half, all right, and then I make sure that I have my edges matching as much as possible. And then what I'm going to do is from the folded edge, what I'm going to do is, all right, so I take and I fold my fabric lengthwise in half. Then I take from the fold and I measure 2 inches and I mark. Make at least a 1/2 inch mark. All right, and then I'm going to take and I'm just going to cut about a 1/2 inch up. All right, and I'm going to cut off. I'm only going to leave this tab part where the folded part of the fabric is, and I'm going to cut off the 1/2 inch on the bottom edge. What that will do is it creates a tab, and let me just do it and then I'll explain to you why I do it. This is not something you have to do, but this is something I found useful for myself. Now I just want to make sure that the fabric says matching to the bottom as possible. I will put my ruler at the 1/2 inch mark. I will then cut it off. Time to change the blade. All right. So what that does is it leaves this tab. All right. And when I open it, so that tab will serve 2 purposes, or 3. One, it tells me that's my bottom of my blanket, so if I had a directional fabric, I know that's the bottom. 2, I need an opening in my fabric to turn, because I'm going to do the same thing on the Sherpa. So that lets me know where to start and stop. And I don't have to worry about remembering double pins or double clips or whatever to signify. And the third thing that it does is I'm going to do a 5/8 inch seam all the way around. Then I'm going to turn my blanket out. And then I'm going to want to top stitch 7/8 away from the edge. So if I didn't have this tab, when I sew the 7/8, it would not catch this fabric at all because I didn't have a seam before when I did the stitching around the blanket. So when I do the top stitching and I fold, and this is, pretend this is, it's inside, and when I do the 7/8, there's enough fabric there that it's going to catch and go over it and close it. Now I do take the time and top stitch the opening, but technically I don't have to because it would be closed. But that's why I do it, because it helps me know, all right, that's where I want to start and stop. Now, if you're doing a bigger blanket, I would do a bigger tab. Like I would do, if you're going to do like a blanket that uses 2 yards, I would do a 6-inch opening because you have a lot of fabric to bring through. So I would do a 6-inch tab. I would mark 3 inches so that I had 3 inches on each side. All right, so now I have this piece, and now I want to cut the Sherpa. So here's my Sherpa fabric. And there is a lot of stretch to Sherpa, so you have to really be careful. All right. As a matter of fact, one of my clips is still in it from the last time I did this. All right, so I'm going to leave it folded in half for the time being. I will cut off the excess because I'm going to use it for a different purpose, different project. So I lay it out, trying to smooth without stretching as much as possible. So I can either remeasure or I can just lay my fabric on here with my tab facing down. But I'm not ready to cut out yet. So I think in my case, the easiest thing's going to probably be to just measure. So, how long? Is this? 33, okay. 33. All right, so I lay my Sherpa out. I try to, as much as possible, get it on the line, make sure my 2 edges are even. If your edges are not even, you should first cut a nice clean edge. Mine are, because I used this fabric for a previous project. So now I know that it's even. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look across, make sure it's on my line. I actually am using my grid. If you don't have a grid, you would have to find some way to be able to lay this out and mark it. So I would just take some kind of marking pencil, lay my tape, and try to mark. And it's hard because it sinks in. The other option you have is you probably can put pins, but you'll have to take them out as you're going to go cut. So I would just mark, go across, mark. I would mark like 4 spots. But because I'm using my mat, I'm going to make sure that my Sherpa is as squared off as I can get it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on my mark, which for me is 33. I'm going to use my fabric weights to hold it down. I'm going to move this over a little so you can see. I'm going to move the camera over. And while I'm over here, I might as well put it on the mark. Yeah, there it is. That's the mark. On this side, then I make sure I have it on this side. I hold down. And then I'll check again. Yeah, it moved. Until I have both ends on the mark that I want. Okay. And then I take my rotary cutter and I'm holding down my ruler. And obviously if you don't have a ruler this long, you're going to have to do this in parts. And then I'm going to cut off. And I'm going to go through twice because my blade has dulled a bit. Okay. Yep, still one spot here. All right. Now I can move this roll out of the way. All right. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up one end of this. And I can take my clip out. And on this, unless you see real loom marks, I wouldn't even bother cutting the edge off because it's going to be inside of your seam. So unless you find that for some reason your loom marks I honestly can't even see where it was on the loom. So I'm going to leave it. All right, so I put my Sherpa fabric right side up, and I've put my fleece on top of it. Because my Sherpa fabric stretches more than my fleece, I'm going to be careful when I'm doing this that I don't stretch the Sherpa too much. All right, and I have it so that, I'm going to move the camera down in a minute, but I have it so that the 1/2 inch that I need to cut off is showing. All right, so I have my Sherpa laid out. I've had to push mine up so I could get it on the camera. And then I have my tab matching but I want to make sure that I have my 1/2 inch that I need to cut off on the other sides of the tab. So what I'm going to do is I'll start at my tab and I'll put 2 pins horizontally so I can pull them out easily. And then I will pin on my fleece, and I'm preparing it so that I can cut off this 1/2 inch. I'll just pin all the way down about, I don't know, every 4 to 5 inches. All right. And then what I want to do is I just want to take my scissor and I want to snip where my 1/2 inch notch is on the Sherpa. I want to mark my Sherpa too. So this way I'm making sure I'm catching it. Yeah, like you see, this one doesn't quite want to catch. And then I'll put my pin back in. Let's see, this one. Yeah, this one did it. Okay. So then if I want, what I can do is I can fold both my Sherpa and my fleece, the notch back. So only the part that I want to cut off, and in this case I'm going to put these pins sideways for the moment, or lengthwise, or horizontally actually, because I'm going across the fabric. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off this 1/2 inch off the Sherpa. Now you can wait and pin the rest, which I think I'm going to do only to show you guys. And so I'm going to put some pins in here, and I'm probably going to put 1 row here, 1 row here, and then there's the rows. So I'll have 4 rows of pins on this. I'm just gently tugging at the Sherpa underneath to make it meet, but I'm not like overstretching it. Okay, I'm going to put some pins in this way on this edge because I need to be able to cut it. And then I'll switch them to the other direction. All right, so I'm gonna just temporarily fold mine so I can pull it up. Obviously, if I wasn't doing this on camera, I would have had the whole thing just laid out. But because I'm doing it on camera, I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm gonna cut this edge, which is actually the top of my blanket. And I'll do it again. And I went off over here, so all right. All right. Now I'm going to turn my pins the other way for this edge. And I'm going to move this. All right, I'm going to move it back down a bit so I can open it back up because we still have to trim this bottom edge. All right, so now I'm going to take and I'm going to remove my first pin that's there. And I'm actually going to do this with a scissor because it's actually going to be easier. And I'm going to cut that 1/2 inch that I need to cut off. And then I will put a pin back in just to keep it together. Take out my next one. Finding my, yeah, okay, my slit. I have to let this out for a minute just so I can cut it. All right, so I still have my tab here. So I will pin that together. And I'll put another one right on the other side of the tab. All right, get this out of the way. And then I'm gonna pull it down and I'm gonna unpin this side, the other side, and the first pin here. And I'm gonna make sure I pin my tab back together and that I'm only cutting So just cutting off that 1/2 inch of fabric at the bottom and leaving my tab, my center tab, in place. Turn these. And there I have it pinned. All right. I do apologize for that. My camera battery died just at that point. Didn't realize it right away, but we were at the end of cutting. So that concludes the cutting part of the video. Part 2 is the actual sewing of the blanket, and I will link that video below so you can just click in the description box. If you like this video so far, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, I would love it if you subscribed. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you.